Hello, Cubs fans. Welcome back to Northside Baseball. Ethan and Brandon here once again to discuss everything going on with the Cubs. We are just out of the Thanksgiving break. The winter meetings are less than a week away at this point, but we want to circle back to a move the Cubs just made, sort of an under the radar signing, but an important one nonetheless. In Phil Maton, obviously, he's a very good relief pitcher. He had a very solid 2025. I'm glad the Cubs made this move. Obviously, we all know that the entire bullpen basically is leaving via free agency or trade this winter. So obviously another rebuild in the relief corp is necessary. But Ethan, I want to get your thoughts on this move. Where do the Cubs have to go next, especially because obviously there's still about five bullpen spots open on the opening day roster.
I think a better question to ask is where the Cubs, don't need help, to be completely honest, because, it's a complete tire fire in Chicago right now. But I think picking up somebody like Phil Maton is great for the Cubs because they need help in their rotation, no matter which way you look at it. He had a really good 2025 season. His ERA was a 2.79, which was an improvement from 2024. So that's always good to look at.
Mhm.
I think that just to make a complete general statement, we need to make more additions to the bullpen. Where that is, it's kind of up in the air. I'll make the point that I always do going back to Baltimore, where they just picked up who's going to end up a reliever, Ryan Helsley, from the Mets. So he's out of contention at this point. But to say that we got somebody is better than nobody. But you're completely right in the statement that out of everybody right now, the bullpen is where we need help. And I don't know where else we can go at the moment. Like you mentioned, the winter meetings are coming up, and that's where a million different moves are made. But I kind of want your, let's call it guidance here. Where do we go from here, Brandon?
Yeah, I think again, it's a question of, what do the Cubs need the most? And, Phil Maton he had a great year. I mean, you look at his baseball savant page, he was in the 90th percentile or higher in basically everything. He struck out over 30% of guys. He got, 36% whiff rate on his pitches. I mean, he generated really weak contact. He's a great pitcher. I mean, if he can continue what he's doing. But it's also important to note that he doesn't throw very hard. His fastball averaged about 90 miles an hour last year, and he doesn't even throw four seamer. He only throws a cutter and a sinker. So, besides Daniel Palencia and like maybe Ben Brown, if he moves to the bullpen full time, there's not a lot of velocity right now. Maybe Porter Hodge too, but the Cubs need velocity. You brought up Ryan Helsley, who's a guy who obviously throws very hard. The Cubs need more of that in this bullpen. That's, just matter of fact. I mean, obviously it'd be great to sign a guy like Devin Williams, for example, who has closing experience, who's been in the NL Central before, but he's also not the hardest throw in the world. I think the Cubs would do really well to, we saw it in that wild card series against the Padres. The Cubs hitters could not touch the Padres relievers. Mason Miller struck everybody out. Adrian Morejon, excuse me, struck everybody out. I mean, it was just a laundry list of guys who threw triple digits. Now, obviously, not every team can be the Padres and have eight guys that just march out there throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, but Daniel Palencia is really the only, reliable guy right now in my opinion that can do that out of the Cubs bullpen. And so I think that after adding Maton on a 2-year deal, there needs to be a genuine, like, actual directive here to bring in two or three guys, even if they're sort of more reclamation project types, but a couple of guys who can throw hard and just add a little bit more variety to the Cubs bullpen.
Yeah, it's really hard to watch the Cubs play. If you look back at the 2025 season, that's just a hard thing to say right now. It's hard to watch the Cubs play. But I will say that, you and I really focused in 2025 on the last few, the sixth to ninth inning, watching both the Cubs batters and pitchers really just fall off because we'd get shut down by so many closing pitchers on so many different teams, which I think is the point of free agency right now. There are so many people, so many closing pitchers in free agency right now that we can pick up. Now, am I going to talk about any of them? Absolutely not, because I don't want to jinx it even right now. But what I will say is that on the flip end of things, we would also lose so many games because our closing pitchers could not deliver, and we would be tied at maybe the seventh inning, and then completely, the score would just get, it would be thrown out the window because our
Mhm.
closing pitchers just can't deliver right now. And I think that is the Cubs' main problem. Fielding were great. We just got a bunch of different awards. Nico Horner was amazing this year. But
Mhm.
again, our pitchers are just that's where we're at right now with
Yeah.
Cubs pitching. I don't even want to talk about Shota Imanaga. That yippee, he's back in Chicago, but nobody even wants to celebrate he's back in Chicago. So I think the moral of this story is that we need more pitchers. But the question is, where do we go from here? I think the front office, like me, is scratching their head right now. So that's the moral of the story. Is there any kind of ending thoughts you want to give here before we close out this video?
Yeah, I think it's, I think you said it all right there. But yeah, I think the Cubs are, we know that they sometimes like to move slowly in the offseason. Sometimes, obviously, they move quickly. This was obviously, a relatively early signing pre-Thanksgiving. But yeah, I mean, th there needs to be, again, unless you really think Porter Hodge is going to turn things around after, a difficult 2025 season, and unless you think Ben Brown and Luke Little are going to finally settle in at the major league level as, setup men for Daniel Palencia. There's got to be. I mean, again, it's not to say that the Cubs are like, "Hey, we signed Phil Maton, Maton, and we're done." Like Jed Hoyer's, putting his feet up and just calling it a day. Hopefully, that's not what he's
If
doing.
they
But
do, they're smoking something that
but yeah, I think again, this is a smart move in a vacuum. This is the kind of move that the Cubs needed to make at the onset of the offseason. It's just that this has to be the first move of many. But as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. What do you think about this signing? Are you excited that, there's a veteran reliever coming in to join the bullpen this year? The Cubs signed a guy to a multi-year contract finally, which a reliever, which is nice. Let us know your thoughts, and as always, we'll try to respond to every single comment.